Hello and welcome. You're watching Morning Brief at 9. I am Shweta Kothari. As Delhi elections near, we will be talking about all the freebies that political parties have to offer to you. Also on the show today, Donald Trump's tariffs and the take back of those tariffs and what it means for the global markets as well as Indian markets. We'll be joined by Shubhamoy Bhattacharjee, a journalist, and also will be with us Gopal Krishna Agrawal on Morning Brief at 9. Watching Morning Brief at 9. I'm Shweta Kothari. Let's take a quick look at the top stories we are tracking today. Donald Trump delays the start of tariffs on Mexico, Canada for a month on Monday after the US neighbor struck last-minute deals to tighten border measures against the flow of immigrants and the drug fentanyl. A US military plane departs with illegal migrants to India. A US official told media the C-17 aircraft departed with migrants aboard that would arrive in India in not less than 24 hours. And the Indian rupee slumped almost 0.6% or 49 paise to breach the 87 against dollar mark on Monday, settling a bit, albeit a little higher at 86.91. This after a meltdown for most emerging market currencies and stock market rout across Asia and Europe on the first day of trading after President Donald Trump imposed higher tariffs. And gold prices fell nearly 1% on Monday, that is 3rd of Feb, after reaching an all-time high in the previous sessions. The decline occurred as the US dollar strengthened and escalating global trade tensions. In India, gold prices slipped by 10 rupees to 84,480 per 10 gram in major cities. And the RBI's Monetary Policy Committee's final meeting, or first meeting for this year, but final meeting for financial year 25, that is scheduled to be held later this week amid expectation of a 25 basis rate cut. However, experts say that the Indian rupee recording a fresh all-time low against the US dollar may cut those expectations by at least a couple of months. In a major reform that will allow FDI in insurance sector to increase from 74% to 100% was announced in Budget 2025. The change opens the door for global insurance giants to enter Indian market, but challenges remain plenty. The two-wheeler market put up a mixed performance in the month of January, with some manufacturers seeing a growth while others witnessing sliding sales. Leading two-wheeler manufacturer Royal Enfield, TVS Motor, Suzuki Motorcycle record an increase in domestic sales compared to January of 2024. Meanwhile, Hero MotoCorp, Bajaj Auto record muted performance. India's advertising industry is projected to grow at 6.5% in 2025 to reach a market size of 1.1 trillion rupees by the end of the year, driven by sales in digital segments. This according to the Dentsu E4M digital report. And Forbes released a list of most powerful nations in the world, with United Nations leading the ranking, followed by China and Israel holding the 10th spot. India, however, remains absent from the top 10. You're watching Morning Brief at 9. I'm Shweta Kothari. Our top story at this hour: the rupee slipped past 87 against the US dollar and hit a lifetime low yesterday, but settled marginally higher at 86.91. Will rupee on its downward trajectory, and how will it really impact people? Well, Let's begin with students. Now, students who are studying overseas will have a very hard time shoring up their finances to meet their daily needs. Aspiring students, especially in the universities in the US, planning to either travel abroad or those who are planning to import items will also be severely affected as the cost of tuition, living expenses, traveling expenses, fees which is dominated in dollar will go up now substantially. Now, parents who fund their children's education from savings will see a higher outgo. Persons who have taken bank loans for their foreign education will feel the pinch. Moreover, students will have to now shell out more money for examinations such as TOEFL, GRE and GMAT. How much more? Let's find out. But first, let's take a look at how the rupee has performed against the dollar. Now, in 2015, the rupee was around 67 a dollar. Cut to 2022, the rupee climbed a steep trajectory to touch 83 against the dollar. In 2025, it has already touched an all-time high of 87 against the dollar. So rupee is on a downward trajectory compared to the dollar. What does this mean? Well, this means the rupee has weakened by nearly 30% against the US dollar in the last decade, the last 10 years alone, making dollar way more expensive for Indians. Now, studying in the US involves a lot of expenses, including tuition fee, accommodation and living cost, all of which are priced in dollar. So, as the rupee depreciates, the cost of these expenses in Indian rupee will rise sharply. Remember, this is an inverse relationship. So, for instance, let's assume that the annual tuition fee for a US university is fixed at $50,000. Now, in 2015, students would have to shell out 33.5 lakh rupees. But by 2022, the same tuition fee at 50,000 US dollars would be 41.5 lakh rupees. And by 2025, the tuition fee would be almost 43.5 lakh rupees. This means that the same fee has now increased by 10 lakh rupees in 10 years due to rupee's depreciation. Similarly, living expenses in the US for all those who are living in the US, students, travelers, this means around $20,000 annually in living expenses, which have now also become way more expensive. So in 2015, if you were spending about 13.4 lakh rupees, by 2025, you would be spending about 17.4 lakh rupees at constant prices, given that we're not increasing prices based on inflation and keeping those prices fixed at $20,000. This adds an extra 4 lakh rupee to the overall cost of living. Combine the tuition fee and living expense if you're a student in the US, it has now risen dramatically from 46.9 lakh rupees in 2015 to almost 60 lakh rupees in 2025. Now, this is a 30% increase in just 10 years due to rupee's depreciation. What does this mean for students? Well, it means number one, more borrowing. Students taking loan in rupees will need to now borrow more. This means that there will be increased debt burden, which will impact their ability to finance their education. It also means greater financial planning. Families must have significantly more savings now to afford overseas education. Parents will have to shell out a lot more money compared to what they had to 10 years ago, well, almost 30% more. And this also means that some students may opt out for more affordable destinations or in fact delay their plans to go to the US for education if the cost of living remains elevated. Now, with the rupee projected to weaken further in days and weeks to come, the financial challenge of pursuing at least overseas education, travel to the US will only go up. Now, moving on, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has announced major reforms that will allow FDI or foreign direct investment in insurance sector to increase from current 74% to 100% going into the next financial year. Now, this change opens the door for global insurance giants to enter Indian market, majorly boosting foreign investments and raising levels of competition in India. The government hopes that this reform will improve insurance penetration in India, which currently stands at just 3.7%, way lower than global average. In 23-24 compared to the global average of 7%. Now, with FDI cap lifted, foreign insurers will be able to operate more independently in India, bringing with them advanced technology, sophisticated risk management practices, and innovative products. Experts predict that these changes will address the capital needs for India's insurance sector, making it more competitive and enabling insurers to offer better products and services. Currently, 20 of the world's top 25 insurance firms are not present in India, but this policy change is expected to attract them. To facilitate the increase in FDI, amendments to the Insurance Act of 1938, the Life Insurance Corporation Act of 1956 and the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority Act of 1999 will be required. So there will be amendments made to all of these acts. Now, Nirmala Sitharaman confirmed that the draft bill to implement these changes will be presented in the Parliament soon. So hopefully in the ongoing budget session of the Parliament. But good news there as far as insurance sector is concerned. However, experts say that there will be a lot of challenges that both foreign players and Indian players will have to mitigate in the Indian market. But moving on now to India's advertising industry, which is expected to grow by almost 6.5% in 2025, reaching 1.1 trillion rupees, with digital segment leading the charge. And this according to Dentsu E4M digital report of 2025. Now, digital media accounts for nearly 49% of advertising spend, surpassing television with 28% and print with 17%. So, the segments of television and print for advertising are now shrinking. The out-of-home advertising segment, or the OOH, including digital displays, airport billboards, have seen major growth, with ad spend reaching nearly 3,800 crore rupees in the year 2023. TV and print media are witnessing decline, with TV shares expected to fall further to 24% and print to 15% by the end of 2025. Now, India's two-wheeler market has shown positive growth in January of 2025, with key players like Hero MotoCorp, TVS Motor Company and Suzuki Motorcycle India, as well as Royal Enfield, reporting strong year-to-year sales performance. Hero led the charge with impressive sales of nearly 442,000 units, marking a major 141% growth in exports, while domestic sales accounted for nearly 400,000 units. Now, TVS Motor Company also saw a 17% growth in total sales, reaching above the 397,000 units, with electric vehicle sales witnessing a 55% increase. Suzuki Motorcycle India posted a 14% sales growth, with exports showing an impressive 38% year-on-year rise. Meanwhile, Royal Enfield sales reached 91,000 units, reflecting a 21% growth, and the company saw an outstanding 79% rise in exports. So a good month there as far as January is concerned for two-wheelers across all segments and across all both imports and exports, as well as domestic sales for the month of January. Now, Forbes has revealed its 2025 list of the world's 10 most powerful countries, with the United States topping the rankings, followed by China in the second place. Israel secured the 10th spot, while India, despite its vast population, strong military and massive economic power, notably did not make it to the top 10. Now, India currently ranks at 12th spot in the global standing, according to Forbes, which has based its rankings on leadership, economic influence, political power, international alliance, and military strength. India's absence from the top 10 has generated considerable debate, especially given its position as the world's fifth largest economy and its considerable military and diplomatic reach. Now, those of course are the stories that are coming to light as far as India is concerned. But after this very short break, we'll be shifting focus to the national capital here in India to understand what goes behind freebie politics and how to make it work when it comes to the math of budget and the math of revenue collection after this very short break.
Associate sponsor, new Reuters GT line, style to wander.
Your promise is IGI certified. 14-step grading process. IGI Trust certified.
Mama must be missing us, na?
Let's take you one bit, give me one day. Feel the heat under my skin, it's a one day. You be like it when you see we are done, hey. It doesn't matter, just gotta get going.
New GT line, Tygoon and Virtus. Volkswagen.
It's decision time in Delhi.
Will BJP return to power after 26 years?
Can Aam Aadmi Party beat the odds and gain a fourth term?
Will the Congress finally be able to reverse its fortunes in these polls?
An existential battle for all three parties right here in the national capital.
Have freebies, corruption and toxic Yamuna set the narrative?
What's the Aam Aadmi's mood in Delhi?
Polls in Delhi, but national impact.
All angles on the Delhi votes covered here
Covered right here.
Covered here.
at News9.
It's not the fiefdom of politicians. They owe it to the people. Matter is now more about faith of the millions of devotees than just political slugfest. Does that mean that I can't get a job in Chennai, although I may be best suited for that particular job? They have more civic sense, they have more of civility than all these men. My name is Sudha Sadanand. Welcome to the South Indian.
We are at the highest airfield in India and one of the highest airfield in the world. It is the most beautiful airfield in India. There's no aircraft that cannot land on this airfield.
This will be the highest airfield in India and fifth in the world.
This particular runway will cater for most of the military aircraft, fighters and transport landing.
A strategic edge to the forces, deterrent for our neighboring countries.
Jai Hind.
Yes, 100% completion. TV9 News and your News9 Plus is the first team here.
This and more. Streaming on News9 Plus. Subscribe and get free vouchers.
While you're watching Morning Brief at 9, I'm Shweta Kothari. Let's take a quick look at how markets are reacting this morning. There's been an onslaught of news items from Donald Trump's rolling out of tariffs to the rollback that were announced yesterday. Markets, in fact, are reacting very, very positively to that news. Nifty up almost 0.5%, 0.64% up at around 23,509. Sensex also up 0.5%, about 77,521. That's the markets touching as of this morning. Mid cap, small cap also reacting positively to that news. Mid cap, in fact, up 7.72% at 53,372. Small cap also up 0.8% at 16,752. India Wix, which is the volatility index, is currently down 1%, settling around 14.2 as of this morning. So as I mentioned, a slew of news items there amid the global tumult that we saw unfolding starting 1st of Feb. We now know that there is a break, at least on tariffs, on Mexico, China and Canada after late night conversations between leaders of all these nations with Donald Trump, who have now promised to contain migration as well as ensure that there is less outflow of drugs between these two countries, post which Donald Trump has now finally given way to some relief, at least for a month. And on the back of all those global cues, Indian markets also reacting positively as of this morning. Now let's shift focus to the story we are tracking just about A day before elections in the national capital, the Aam Aadmi Party, the Bharatiya Janata Party and the Congress have upped their ante in the run-up to the Delhi elections of 2025. All three parties have announced schemes to woo voters in poll-bound Delhi. They have made tens of promises to fulfill the need of the poor, the middle class, women, youth, priests, among other sections of the society, if they come to power in Delhi after winning Delhi Assembly elections. So what are these promises, and does the math add up? We'll be talking about all of that. But on your screens right now, freebies as far as youth is concerned. Aam Aadmi Party suggesting a scholarship. BJP says it will be giving more money in the hands of youth. And finally, Congress Party saying that there will be an allocation of about 8,500 per person for an apprenticeship for a year. That is as far as youth is concerned. Shifting focus to elderlies now. Aam Aadmi Party saying that we'll make treatment free. At the same time, BJP is saying we're going to give you pensions of about 2,500 rupees per elderly, someone who's aged between 60 to 70 years, and a pension of 3,000 for those who are above 70 years of age. Let's take a look at women now. Big promises there made for women. Aam Aadmi Party says we're going to give you 2,100 rupees a month as part of the Mahila Samman Yojana. Of course, there's a criteria. You have to be aged above 18 years. BJP is saying we're giving you more. We'll give you 2,500 rupees if we come to power. And Congress Party is also saying we'll offer you 2,500 rupees as far as the Pyari Didi Yojana, which was announced in their manifesto. So an attempt being made by almost every political party which was in fray to woo the voters of the national capital. What does it really mean for the math? Let's talk about that. Gopal Krishna Agrawal, national spokesperson for the BJP Economic Affairs, joining us on the show. Also with us is Shubhamoy Bhattacharjee, author and contributing editor to Business Standard. My colleague Rakesh Khar, editor at News9 Mediaverse. All three gentlemen joining us live this morning. Rakesh, I want to begin with you. Ravery politics at its best. Almost everybody is offering it now.
Absolutely, Shweta. Good morning to all our panelists and to you as well. Ravery politics is at a premium. It's possibly winning votes, but at a huge cost. The fiscal math is obviously going for a toss. Unfortunately, each and every political party has, so to say, gone in for this kind of, political mandate. And the results, I see maybe not in the immediate framework, but in the medium and long term are going to be disastrous from the fiscal perspective. I do remember, I'm going to take you back to the budget presented by P. Chidambaram. It was called a historic budget in 2008, which gave the largest ever dole, if it was called then, was 60,000 crore farm loan waiver. I would wonder today if we do an audit of what exactly has happened with those farmers, whether they've actually gained. I really don't think, such kind of, waivers and farm loans and now Ravery, these new lexicons that have entered the political economy of India, are really going to bring about some large-scale change at the grassroots level. I am all for politics of empowerment rather than politics of entitlement. There is a nuanced difference between the two. And unfortunately, I had, imagined in the COVID time, the BJP-led government with Prime Minister Modi had taken a conscious call to steer clear of, this politics of entitlement and so to say, subverted tremendous pressure to give universal basic income, which was being favored by the leader of the, by the opposition. And it steered the fiscal path. And the results of that were a strong growing economy. But now with each election after election, this temptation, to give doles out as cash handouts is not good for economy. These are crutches which are not going to build the true potential of each and every individual of this country. We need to make 140 crore people stand on their feet. And crutches are never a lasting solution.
All right. Crutches are not a lasting solution. Let's quickly get in Gopal Krishna Agrawal. Gopal, do you agree crutches are not lasting solutions? While on one hand, we are hoping to find some sort of balance between social security as well as economic prosperity. We're looking at huge numbers here as far as women is concerned. Now, that is one of the biggest vote bank for any political party in the national capital. Just one poll promise alone of giving 2,500 rupees per year to each woman is going to cost about 18,000 crore rupees per year. This is more than the education budget for the national capital. How fair is it?
No, I think we have to differentiate between what is freebies or dole and what is for the empowerment of that section particularly. if you don't make that differentiation, it is quite difficult to analyze it properly. The thing is that we as a nation and the government is a social welfare scheme. That's the responsibility given by the constitution. You have to work for the welfare of the every sections of the society, whether it is women, poor, or youth, or senior citizen. And those who are vulnerable, they have to be taken care more than other persons. So there are two ways. The person who are in the working population are strong enough to work. For them, the government has to provide an ecosystem of entrepreneurship, employment, self-employment, other economic activitis. So we, as a government, we are, and for the other section which is vulnerable, you have to go for welfare schemes. What our Modi ji is doing is that we are taking care of both. Our economy is growing at a very fast pace. We are one of the fastest growing economy in the world. We are now 5th largest. We target to become the 3rd largest economy in the world. Our FDI is strong and we have a strong reserves, also more than $700 billion. GDP growth rate is very high compared to other nations. And we want to aspire to become a Viksit Bharat by 2047. So on the economic front, whether it is mobile industry, manufacturing industry, space technology, IT, AI, green energy, all these segments are very well taken care of by our government under Modi ji in the central budget and the central government provision. The second part is through the welfare. So what we are doing is providing for the welfare in the budget of the government. If you don't provide for the welfare in the budget and announce them without taking care of targeted delivery, efficiency in delivery, then controlling the leakages and doing nepotism, that is complex. So it is ultimately falls on governance. How efficient your governance model is. If your governance model is good, efficient, and takes care of targeted delivery, and also on economic front, you have to see in the all the 4 aspects that I have underlined. Yeah,
all right.
I cannot
no, but
say
I have to ask you, you know, as far as the efficiency model of Aam Aadmi Party is concerned, I'm looking at the numbers, and the numbers are suggesting that despite all the freebies that they had to offer and everything that the BJP and Congress opposed to in the last 10 years of Aam Aadmi Party in Delhi, their debt to GDP ratio is about 3%, just over 3%, which is better than many states. They are, you know, spending about 15 to 18% of the total budget on freebies and subsidies, which is again not very bad. So are you suggesting at this point in time that Aam Aadmi Party is doing well, and if yes, how is BJP likely to differ with respect to what it's offering the people of Delhi?
I told you, you have to not only look after the welfare of certain sections as a vote bank, you have to also work for the economic growth and development. What is the status of environment in Delhi? What is the status of water? What they are doing in the electricity companies, they are not providing, they are giving subsidy on the electric, at the low rate electricity to the citizen of India. At the same time, the government is not paying the electricity charges to those companies, and those companies are creating regulatory assets in their books. The company discoms in Delhi are not charging electricity for 200 units from the people of the state, but they are also not being paid by the government. This way is a fraud on the people. The companies are just creating regulatory assets and taking bank loans. This is bad economics. You have to understand. I told you, freebies is a wrong word at use sometimes. You have to look after the welfare, at the same time look after the economic growth and the governance. Complete failure of governance in Aam Aadmi Party. You see the scams, or their leaders are in jail. Yamuna has not been clarified. Environment is a problem. Jal board is a problem. Then electricity, I have told you. Then education, the Mohalla clinic, the way they are advertising only and doing nothing for the Mohalla clinic. So these governance and welfare together, and also how you will generate the resources. It is good that Delhi has a positive budget. Right. But see the fall of budgetary provisions over the year. So governance is a failure. If the governance is failure, simply welfare for the vote bank politics is bad. But if you are also doing governance, good economics, economic growth, then delivering on environment, other concerns of the people.
Understood.
And at the same time welfare with the transparent mechanism.
Right. Understood. So good budget, but governance failure. I think that's the takeaway as far as Aam Aadmi Party is concerned. Shubhamoy Bhattacharya, do you think this is freebie politics or this is about welfare? Because, Gopal Krishna Agrawal says this is welfare politics. This is not freebie politics. We are helping the downtrodden. We are helping those who want most of our help. But are we suggesting 71 lakh women are all in need of help in the national capital? Are they all downtrodden, or do they all want, some sort of money support every year in order to operate and do well in the country?
That's a problem. Where does the difference between welfare and freebie come along? Rakesh was actually making a very good point that we are all for giving support where it's needed. But that is a very fine distinction. Ultimately, two things. First of all, looking at it number, is it better to try to give welfare by handing out cash is the biggest problem. If that is so, then we don't need a government. If cash is to be simply given, then just set up an ATM machine. People can simply be given a card, they go out there and they have got a cash and that's it. Why do we need governance? A governance is supposed to be for help, for creating things which the private sector will not be able to do, which is necessary, the government also thinks will be necessary for the society. Delhi is in unusual position. Why? Because Delhi has a huge budget, but not because of any government, but simply because of the fact that it's a rich city. Delhi can afford to give money, but the estimates that are created, but the example that is created is dangerous for the rest of the country. Do you realize that Delhi's money that is being given out is also being used by AAP for Punjab? And Punjab has no way the finances that Delhi has, but the ambition of giving out freebies in the same way that Delhi is giving. Now that's dangerous, very dangerous. What's the other thing? That despite being a cash-rich city, Delhi's capital estimate outlay in 23-24 is 25% lower than budgeted. Between FY15 to FY23, on average, Delhi has spent 39% lower on capital outlay than budgeted. This is much higher, much worse than the average underspending on capital outlay by states at 19%. So what's happening? Essentially, the state had the money, went out to give it to the people. In the process, it cut down on capital expenditure, which is very necessary. All the things that is necessary has been cut down by, as I said, 39%, nearly 40% lower capital outlay than budgeted. So every year you're cutting down on capital outlay. And this in a city which can actually afford not to do so. So there is a major pressure that is developing. You talked about the state GDP ratio to debt to GDP ratio. Delhi is comfortable, but hang on. Delhi's borrowing is becoming, once you're doing these things, its borrowing rate is rising. Why should Delhi be in that sort of a situation? And as I said, if you have the example that Delhi sets of a financially very rich city, yet going down the same route of freebie, then other states which do not have that capacity will be equally interested in doing so. Because obviously, if cash is going to be used to get votes, then there is no reason for governments to govern. And that's a very big problem. That's a very big problem. This, we can talk about it even more. But
right.
that's why these are my first comments. Yeah.
All right. A big problem, Rakesh. What we are looking at is that capital outlay spends on, on acquiring, maintaining, improving assets is abysmally low, as Shubhamoy pointed out, about 40% lower than what was budgeted. Vis-a-vis the subsidies and the revenue expenditure on all subsidies, that is growing at a very fast clip. So if one were to look at it mathematically, it looks like fiscal math is going out of window.
That's what I said in my opening comment, Shweta. There are states which are little comfortable today, but it's about tomorrow and day after. That's where the problem is. Overall combined state, debt to GDP ratio with center is not in a very comfortable position. I am making a point irrespective of all political parties, which I think nobody can be sane in terms of, going in for this revenue politics. They're all in it for votes. And they might be entitled politically, but economically it's a disaster. 3 points I want to make. First and foremost, there are no free lunches. So someone is paying for this. Who is paying for this? The sanity of your balance sheet as a country, as a state goes for toss. Second, I would imagine, I had requested and put in my column that the finance minister in the budget as a revolutionary bold reform should have put a moratorium, should have announced a moratorium on all such schemes, because we have elections later this year in Bihar. So we'll see a second episode of this coming up front. So, if the state governments and the center don't resist this temptation, I may be a little radical in asking for the Supreme Court to intervene, which is anyway, has heard this in an interim manner, to intervene and say that, we have to look at going away from this cash incentive. Shubhama is absolutely right. You just install ATMs all over the country, and then, people will access cash. So the entire argument is not against welfare mechanism. The argument is against cash rollout. It really cripples your own individual capability to, strike your own deal. And lastly, the point about India is Indian economy is World Bank, IMF has been repeatedly talking about triggering the women GDP. Now look at the irony of it. At one level, we are talking about triggering the women GDP, which is the only way to have a double-digit growth in this country. And the state politicians, the central government, all are going to woo women voters, which looks so nice, very nice, a very, very fashionable political statement. But you are not allowing them to, you have to create policies to bring them back into the economic fold where they contribute to the GDP. They're independent economically. So where are those policies? They've completely moved away from the political discourse, which is very sad.
Gopal Krishna Agrawal, I think it's a fair argument. Rather than giving money in the hands of people, why not empower them to earn more for themselves? And if a substantial part of the current, GDP is being spent, or the budget is being spent towards subsidies, and something that the BJP has opposed for quite a while now, since Aam Aadmi Party was in power, it looks like to every person out there that BJP and the Congress party and any other opposition that were to be in Delhi is actually following the same model of freebies or of what you call as empowerment.
If we don't look into the solution of this whole problem, then we are just doing an academic discussion at any place of time. I very well know that freebies which are currently going out are a problem area. What is the solution? It is not going to stop like this, because welfare is also a requirement of the government. What we can do is, as a solution, that provide them in the budget properly and talk about the fiscal consolidation. You see, what I'll give you two examples. Karnataka transferred, they promised in Congress government in Karnataka promised so many freebies. And later on, when they won the election, they divert 40,000 crore from the development project fund to providing the promises. So that is bad. In Himachal, they announced NPS and other schemes, and then they did not have their provision in the budget to at least give them. What we are doing in the center is, you see in this budget, we have a fiscal deficit of 4.9% into the last budget year. This year we have kept a target of 4.4%. Still, we have given a big relief to the middle class. We have given relief to many other things. So this is the solution. Provide them, look after the fiscal consolidation, look into the resources, targeted welfare, leakages, etc., nepotism, corruption, etc., have to be removed, etc. Then it is a welfare. Otherwise, it's just a vote bank politics. This differentiation, if academic discussions and governance and in people who understand these things are not taking place and no clear narrative is built, otherwise this is not going to stop. This is a welfare. This is a requirement, and with democracy that we have, these are not going to go away like this in academic discussions. You have to talk on the narrative that budgetary provisions is a must. you have to talk about FRBM, fiscal consolidation roadmap, and not talk about out of balance sheet provisions like Delhi is doing for the discom companies, or earlier Congress did it for the oil bond by issuing oil bonds, etc. These are very important. Though this is a complicated discussion, but I tell you that without this proper budgetary provisions and fiscal roadmap, fiscal consolidation roadmap, and managing balances and good governance, this is freebies. Otherwise, it's a welfare. This distinction we have to understand very clearly. In the center, we have implemented it, understood it, but the state government under oppositions are not doing it. Delhi's example, Karnataka I have given, Himachal I have given, Punjab, other panelists have given the example of Punjab. So I think this distinction is very important.
This distinction is important. Unfortunately, it does look like right now, Gopal Krishna Agrawal, that all political parties they're in the same pit. They're playing with the same set of rules, and nobody is really standing out. So we want this discourse to go beyond, of course, academia right now, but nobody is really standing out by the way of what they have to offer. But before I let you go, gentlemen, Shubhamoy, Rakesh, first coming to you, Shubhamoy, it does look like when people of Delhi are voting tomorrow, I think they will really be choosing between whether I should get 2100 or 2500, because this is literally, money for who I vote for. More money in my hand if I vote for one party, a little less money perhaps if I vote for another. But governance, fiscal math, everything that would be important to ensure long-term growth for Delhi is not being kept into account.
Shweta, the budget this year, the annual, the financial, the one which Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented, has a brilliant statistic. How much of the money that has been given by the center to the state from the centrally sponsored schemes is spent unspent. We used to get it after several years of the CAG report. Right now, her budget is showing data as on 31st December 24, cash sitting in states not used. So what's happening? Why is that happening? And what's the percentage? It is 30% of the centrally sponsored scheme cash sitting with the states which have not been used. If the states try to use it very fast, then what they'll use it recklessly. Why are they not able to use it even after 10 months of the budget? Simply because spending on plan schemes and others requires planning, requires analysis, requires space for governance. You talked about governance. The freebie politics has actually taken away the interest of the states to go for governance. Anganwadi schemes has got an unspent budget of 12,000 crore. Midday meal scheme has got an unspent budget of 6,000 crore. Why is this happening? It's happening because the states find that giving out cash, as you say, that's a choice between 2,100 and 2,500, is so much more easy. So what is happening is freebies is not just electing government, it's doing another thing much more dangerous. It is erasing the capacity of the states to do governance.
Right.
So the more freebies there'll be less governance capacity, even if cash is there. Cash is there in the system, but they are not able to do it because most states are becoming crippled by their lack of ability. Their bureaucrats would have lost the ability, would have lost the thought of how to do this thing. This is a serious challenge that is developing, and I think that is the thing that needs to be pointed out. That states are becoming less efficient in terms of administering schemes.
Okay.
That worries me a lot. Yes, Shweta.
Okay. A dangerous, precedent there, Rakesh. When it comes to governance, perhaps governance taking a back seat, but giving out doles to people, more money to people, that's taking a precedence, and therefore stripping, many governments in many states from really coming out ways with which you can really, lead to long-term development. Easy money dole-outs are now becoming a better alternative.
Absolutely, what Shubhamoy pointed out is the collateral damage that is happening because of this incentive for cash for votes. I'm sorry using that word, that terminology again, but that's what it is. A voter, you can't blame the voter. The voter is going to go for something that is relevant to him. What is relevant to him is that I'm getting cash in hand, and as I keep saying, this incapacitates your own capability to stand on your own feet. which is not in India's interest, which is not in states' interest. And the second most important thing is the schemes that we are looking at, central and states. Someday, in the near future, we have to get away from the politics about implementing schemes. Look at the, scheme that we have in Delhi, Mohalla Clinic. Why can't we have both the schemes running concurrently? Why can't the, Indian citizen benefit from both the schemes? But this politics about central schemes not being implemented in the states and, center at times because of political reasons criticizing schemes which may be genuinely good. These are challenges that we face as a polity, and we need to address them as, not just politicians, but as those who are looking at the maths as well.
All right, and the clock is ticking as far as Delhi elections is concerned. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us, for putting this in perspective. It's going to be a tough choice for people of Delhi. I have to give it to them for who they will vote for tomorrow. Where will they cast their ballot? But as far as freebies is concerned, there is plenty to choose from. Thank you very much for joining us, gentlemen, on this broadcast. But shifting focus now, let's take a quick look at some of the top stories we are tracking coming from all across the world. US military begins deporting Indian migrants as a part of Donald Trump's expanded crackdown on undocumented immigrants, with their flights now reaching distant destinations like India. And US President Donald Trump pauses tariffs on Canada and Mexico after broader security agreements with their leaders. Canada bans US firms, cancels Elon Musk's Starlink deal in response to Trump's tariffs. And Wall Street closed lower but pared all losses as Donald Trump paused tariffs on Mexico and Canada. Bitcoin hits 3-week low as trade war fears trigger a broader sell-off in cryptocurrencies. Automakers and beer brewers recover losses after Donald Trump announces 1-month pause on tariffs against Mexico. And Trump threatens to cut funding for South Africa over controversial land expropriation policy. Donald Trump orders creation of US sovereign wealth fund, suggests it could be used to purchase TikTok. Elon Musk announces plans to shut down USAID as part of efforts to shrink the US government and cut costs. And a top global story at this hour, a US military plane has begun deporting Indian migrants, implementing Donald Trump's hardline stance against estimated 11 million undocumented migrants in the United States. The C-14 aircraft, according to Reuters, has already departed and is expected to reach India in the next 24 hours, making it the farthest destination for the US military deportation flights. Now, this military deportation strategy, which was launched last week as a part of Donald Trump's emergency immigration declaration, has already seen over 5,000 migrants being deported from locations such as Texas, San Diego, California, among others. Although majorly the flights have been directed to Latin American countries like Guatemala, Peru and Honduras, India is now the latest country involved in this operation. And in a major development, US President Donald Trump has backed away from his threat to impose steep tariffs on Mexico and Canada. Leaders from both countries confirmed the decision on Monday, easing fears of an immediate trade standoff. However, tensions with China remain high as the US tariffs on Chinese goods are still set to take effect within hours, indicating that the trade battle with Beijing is far from over.
U.S. President Donald Trump backed away from his threat to impose a steep 25% tariff on Canada for 1 month, according to Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The decision came after the two leaders had a phone call that Trump said went very well, during which Trudeau promised to deploy new technology and personnel along its border with the United States to stop the flow of fentanyl. Just hours earlier, Trump also paused a planned 25% tariff on Mexico after President Claudia Sheinbaum agreed to send 10,000 National Guard members to the border to stem the flow of illegal drugs. She told reporters on Monday the agreement included a U.S. commitment to act to prevent trafficking of high-powered weapons to Mexico.
I told him we wanted him to pause the tariffs, so we reached that agreement. But I also explained to him that the amounts of high-potency weapons that enter from the United States into Mexico is a serious issue.
Trump said Mexico sending soldiers to the border would stem the flow of narcotics, fentanyl in particular, as well as curb illegal immigration.
He asked me how long I wanted to pause tariffs. I said forever. He told me how much time. I told him a month. But I'm sure that during this month, we'll be able to deliver good results for his people and the people of Mexico.
Trump said the month-long suspension would be used to engage in further negotiations. U.S. tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China had been set to take effect at midnight on Tuesday.
And the U.S. stock markets closed lower on Monday but managed to partially recover from sharper losses earlier in the day. The rebound came after Donald Trump announced a delay in tariffs on Mexico and Canada, easing investors' fear that had triggered a global rush to safe haven assets. Now, despite the late recovery, major indexes still ended the day in red.
Wall Street's main indexes closed lower on Monday, but partly recovered from steeper losses after President Trump said he would pause his planned tariffs on Mexico and Canada for 1 month. The Dow dropped roughly 0.3%, the S&P 500 shed about 0.75%, and the Nasdaq lost 1.2%. Trump's weekend announcement of 25% tariffs on Mexican and Canadian imports, as well as a 10% tariff on Chinese goods, initially roiled global markets. But U.S. stocks pared losses after Trump on Monday announced a 1-month pause for tariffs on Mexico and then Canada after the two U.S. neighbors offered to send personnel to the border to stem the flow of illegal drugs, especially fentanyl. Keith Buchanan is Senior Portfolio Manager and Partner at Globalt Investments.
We're now just entering the phase of how do campaign promises and stump speeches translate into actual policy. The bigger surprise is that the tariffs came before tax cuts and a lot of other promises that were made on the campaign trail. So we're still seeing what the priorities of the administration happen to be, and as we go forward, how those evolve as we start to formulate the growth prospects and, frankly, the inflation prospects going forward for 2025 and 2026.
The VIX Volatility Index, known as Wall Street's fear gauge, touched its highest level in a week amid the tariff turmoil. And Treasury yields edged down as investors fled to safer assets such as bonds and gold, which hit a record high. Among Monday's stock moves, shares of Nvidia dropped 2.8% as semiconductor stocks retreated. Tyson Foods shares gained more than 2% after the meatpacker raised its annual sales forecast. And IDEX Laboratories jumped over 11% after the animal diagnostics maker beat fourth-quarter profit and revenue estimates.
And cryptocurrency prices took a hit on Monday, with Bitcoin falling to a 3-week low. The decline comes as fears of a potential trade war shook investor confidence, triggering a broad sell-off across global financial markets. I leave you with this story.
Cryptocurrency prices slid on Monday, with Bitcoin at a 3-week low. The risk of a trade war spooked investors and caused a sell-off across financial markets. Bitcoin hit a low of $91,441 overnight. Smaller cryptocurrency Ether has lost nearly a quarter in value since Friday. Over the weekend, US President Donald Trump imposed 25% tariffs on Mexican and most Canadian imports and 10% on goods from China starting Tuesday. Canada and Mexico vowed retaliatory measures. China said it would challenge Trump's levies at the World Trade Organization. Industry data shows almost a quarter of the 100 largest cryptocurrencies have lost a fifth or more in value over the last 24 hours. Data also showed Trump's own cryptocurrency slid below $20. The coin was launched shortly before Trump's inauguration and initially surged, hitting highs above $73.
Hello, Bitcoiners.
There is added downward pressure on crypto after a strong rally in the wake of Trump's election. Some investors have felt disappointed at the lack of immediate moves to boost crypto or loosen regulations since he took office. Bitcoin touched a record high over $107,000 on January 20th when Trump was sworn in as president.
Mama must be missing us, na?
Let's take it for a spin, give me one day. Feel the itch under my skin, it's a fun day. You been like it when you see we in the hey. It doesn't matter, just gotta get going.
New GT Line, Taigun and Virtus. Volkswagen.
It's decision time in Delhi.
Will BJP return to power after 26 years?
Can Aam Aadmi Party beat the odds